Hey, what is going on guys? My name is IndyGamerTag and I'm back for your daily Fortnite video. Now in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you guys the best settings for controller on Fortnite, whether you're playing on Xbox One or PS4 or if you're using the controller on PC. This is going to be the combination of the best settings, so I'm going to be talking about sensitivity settings, general settings, keybinds, and then lastly going over dead zones. So if you guys are going to enjoy the video or find it helpful, a like would be very much appreciated. On the contrary, if you genuinely dislike today's video, feel free to leave a dislike, as I would also appreciate a comment letting me know what I can improve on for future videos to make them more enjoyable for you. And if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, then feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. With that out of the way, let's hop right into today's video. Again, I mentioned I'm going to be sharing with you guys the best settings for a controller on Fortnite. Now, if you're playing on a keyboard, you can also use some of these settings. However, this again is specifically for a controller, which I use. I personally use an Xbox One controller on the Xbox One console. However, of course, if you're on controller on PC or any other console, then this could also still be beneficial to you. I'm going to be sharing with you guys my settings, discussing the changes I made in the past week, because if you guys not know, this is kind of like a weekly series, I suppose you could say, on my channel, where every week I show you guys the changes I made in my settings, and for the new people, I show and share with them some really good settings they can use as well. I not only share with you guys my settings, but also share with you guys how to optimize your settings if you don't necessarily want to replicate mine. I'm then going to go on to some more beneficial settings that maybe you guys weren't aware of and maybe weren't aware of the benefits of them. In the gameplay in the background, I am currently using these settings, but anyways, let's hop right into the settings for controller on Fortnite. Now, we're first going to be taking a look at the controller sensitivity, as I'm sure this is probably one of the most important factors of this video if you ask me. First of all, for controller sensitivity X and Y, I have mine both set to 0.66. Now, this sensitivity setting pertains to free aim, so when you're looking around while running around and things, this is what it'll affect, or impact rather. It'll also affect your shotgun aim more than likely, because when you have like a pump or tack out and you're taking shots at someone, you don't typically aim down sights with those that often. I'd say about half the time you're aiming down sights, whereas the other half the time you're completely free aiming, or hip firing rather, and that is what this will affect. A lot of people will try to put this really high at like 0.9 or all the way up to a flat out 1, and it's understandable because it truly makes it look like you're doing a lot of things at once and you're just like an above average player in terms of having such a high sensitivity. However, the problem with that is it'll completely ruin your shotgun aim, as well as when you're just free aiming and looking around, you'll typically overdo it and you're going to see your accuracy is going to decrease and it's going to feel completely unsmooth and realistically out of control for you. So having it at a fairly low setting is what I found to be beneficial. Now, I used to use a 0.84, I believe my first setting video I actually showed you guys my setting, and it was at like a high 0.8. The reason I turned it down again is because it's just giving me a lot more control over my accuracy with shotguns. So I currently have mine at 0.66 for both of these. I believe last week I had to add maybe like a 0.7, it was in the 7s. However, I feel like the most recent update kind of tinkered with this a little bit, so I felt like I really had to lower it quite a bit, so that's why I've chose 0.66. Next, for my controller targeting sensitivity, I have this at 0.3. I don't plan on changing this anytime soon. I'm definitely keeping this one here for at least a month and a half. This is perfect for me. I know a lot of people have theirs a lot higher at maybe like 0.5. When I use that, I truly do miss a lot of my shots and my accuracy goes way down. Whereas when I've lowered it, I just feel like I have a lot more control over everything. I'm able to definitely track people, meaning like when they're running around, I'm still able to keep my crosshairs and accuracy on them for every shot. So lowering it down to here really helped me quite a bit. Of course, a lot of you guys might find this to be a little bit too low for your comfortability zone, but for me, this has helped me quite a bit. Next, the controller scope sensitivity. So this is going to be for like sniper rifles and scoped assault rifles. I have mine set at 0.567, which once again is very low compared to the average. I know a lot of people have their set at like 0.75 or around that range. And again, for me, this is way too high. I really was missing a lot of my shots when I had this. And I found that like 0.55 to 0.7 is pretty comfortable for me. I kind of change this maybe a little bit here and there, but as of right now, I have it at 0.567. So those are the sensitivities that are going to help you in terms of accuracy. Now, what I do to optimize your sensitivity, if you don't want to replicate these because they're too off of what yours are and you feel like you have no control over it, the best way to optimize them is basically take what it is right now that you have it at right now and then lower it a complete decimal place. So if you have your X and Y sensitivity set to 0.7, lower it to 0.6. Same with your targeting and scope sensitivity. Now, you might see an improvement. Chances are you actually will in terms of accuracy. However, if you feel like it's made it even worse, then raise it a decimal place up to what it was originally. So again, if it was at a 0.7 and you put it down to a 0.6 and you don't like it, then put it to a 0.8 and see if that helps. Basically, go up and down decreasing and increasing your sensitivities until you feel like you've found the one that is best for you. And this is essentially how you can optimize your settings in terms of sensitivity. Next, on to our controller building sensitivity. I've not moved mine since last week, as I currently like what it is as of right now. It's at a 1.950, and this is a lot higher than most people's. Now, if you're unaware of in terms of what the building sensitivity is, it's essentially like a multiplier. So it goes from 1 and then it goes all the way up to 2. Currently, I'm very close to a 2, of course, being at a 1.950. So basically, I'm almost doubled the original or default setting, or sensitivity rather, for building. Now, I know a lot of people want to have a really high building sensitivity. In fact, the gameplay in the background, my building wasn't that great. I haven't played for a few days, so I more than likely will lower this until I'm very comfortable once again in terms of building. You guys can see I was making a lot of errors. However, a decent amount of them were due to glitches in Fortnite, but again, nonetheless, there's still a lot of user errors, so I'll probably lower this. Which again leads me on to my point talking about a lot of people wanting to have it too high. They think if they have it really high, they'll be able to outbuild anybody and puts them at quite an advantage, but in reality, that's not really the truth. Keeping it pretty low is probably going to be more beneficial to you than having it too high and out of control. Now, what I'd recommend doing is setting it at around 1.2 if you haven't changed it yet. Then every couple of days, or once you're very comfortable with that setting, raise it maybe a decimal place or half a decimal place. That's typically what I do. I don't like to increase it or decrease it in huge increments. I'll typically do about half a decimal place. So for instance, if I'm at a 1.7 and I'm very used to it and think I can now move up, I'll move it to a 1.75. Then after a few days, I'll move it to a 1.8, then a 1.85, and so on and so forth. Once again, mine is currently on 1.95, which is very high, and I'll more than likely be lowering it just due to the fact that I haven't played in a couple of days and it's kind of getting out of my comfort zone. Next, moving on to my controller edit mode sensitivity. Now, in my previous video last week, I discussed about this being a new setting, and I wasn't able even to mess with it whatsoever. I have now moved it all the way up to a 2, and this is probably what I think the best setting is for realistically everyone in the game. Keeping it really high is going to help you make fast edits. I don't think there's any really purpose to have it very low, because of course it's realistically going to slow down your edits. Not like building sensitivity where you can make constant errors, whereas editing sensitivity is very easy to make minimal errors, and if you do make an error, it's just a click of a button to fix it. So I've raised mine all the way up to 2.000, and I probably won't be changing this in the near future whatsoever. I feel like my edits have gotten a lot faster. Of course, everyone's going to make editing errors, especially on console, because the editing mechanics are just way lower than on PC. So we're at quite the disadvantage in that regards. But again, keeping it really high will probably help you a lot. Now moving on to general settings, and this is basically the ones where you scroll down and that's where it'll be at. So the general settings I think people should have on, first of all, I have show FPS on. In my previous video, not even a settings video, just a general Fortnite video, a lot of people saw my FPS in the top right and were claiming I was on PC, which I was not. So basically I have show FPS on. This way, if I feel like I'm lagging, I can look at my FPS in the top right corner and just kind of see what it is at. Now console is actually capped at a 60 FPS, and a lot of times you'll probably be at like a 40 or 50 FPS range. This is more or less for the curious players that would like to know what their FPS is at. It's definitely not a setting that'll benefit you whatsoever. Next, a setting I think everyone should have on is sprint by default. I think there's realistically no debating whether or not this setting should be on, and I'll explain that when I go over my keybinds, so definitely put this on. I also have tap to search or interact on. What this does is basically makes it so whenever you search a chest or ammo box, you simply tap or click the X or square button. When this is not on, you'll have to hold the X or square button to open the chest. You have to hold it through the entirety until the chest is open, whereas again for this you can simply click it and then it'll open from there, so it just makes it a lot easier. Reset building choice should be on. This basically will help you if you're not on Builder Pro. Aim assist without a doubt should be on. If you now have this on, definitely turn it on. You'll see such a huge increase in accuracy. Edit mode aim assist should definitely be turned off. Basically when this is on, the game tries to guess what edit you're going to do, and I don't see why that's even a thing. Turbo building should be on so you can have your building a lot faster. Auto material change should be on, but this is default setting so no one should have that off. And then Builder Pro build immediately should also be on. This way, this is going to allow you guys to build a lot faster. Now next, we're going to actually go into my brightness, which a lot of you guys probably haven't seen YouTubers discuss this. I have my brightness set to 0.80. The default is set to 0.5 and most people don't really mess with this. The reason I've actually increased it is because it allows me to see players better when they're either in like a dark area or in a shadow. When this is set to the default, yeah, you can still see opponents in the distance or in a shadow. However, raising it makes it a lot easier. And I know a lot of games that are competitive like Overwatch and Call of Duty, or at least used to be, people would actually have their brightness up, and a lot of people would agree that this is very beneficial. So that is why I have mine set to 0.8. Now moving on to my keybinds. My keybinds are actually pretty similar to the default ones. So I have it at Builder Pro, and the only changes I've made is I have toggle pickaxe for my left analog stick, basically when you click it in, otherwise known as L3, and then lastly I have my edit button set to Y. and this is why I have sprint by default on. And my logic behind this is that in order to edit, you have to actually press B or hold B, meaning your edit's going to be a lot slower. Now, your argument might be that you can actually change the edit time all the way down, and basically all you have to do is click it. Now, the problem with this is that B or circle, depending upon what console you're on, is actually the same button to switch mode in terms of bringing out blueprints and building. So if you were to actually try to edit, sometimes it'll bring out your blueprints and vice versa. So I figured I needed to have an edit keybind, and Y or triangle just seemed the best fit for me. My fingers are already laying on these buttons, so all I have to do is simply click a button that my fingers are already on, which again is Y. Now this of course is the original button for a toggle pickaxe. So I then moved this on to L3 or left analog stick, which of course was for sprint. Now most pro players and anyone in the competitive scene would agree that sprint by default should be on. There really shouldn't be a time that you're not sprinting unless of course you are crouching, which the setting doesn't affect when you're crouching. So that's why I have set my toggle pickaxe to L3 and my edit button to Y. It allows me to make a lot quicker and smoother edits, and it's just a lot easier. Now moving on to dead zone, I have my left analog stick set to 0.2 and my right analog stick set to 0.27. I believe the default for both of these is 0.20, which my left analog stick is. Now dead zones is something a lot of people don't like to mess with due to their lack of knowledge on it, and I'm not going to lie, it's kind of a confusing setting and it's very confusing to explain just as it is to understand. So the best way to understand what the dead zones are is basically turn both of these all the way up, go into a game and try playing, and you'll have a general understanding of essentially what this affects. Just a blanket statement to give you a general understanding. Basically dead zone refers to the zone or area of your analog stick where it actually goes into effect. So if you have it all the way up, meaning if you have it all the way down, basically if you barely move your analog stick, then your player will either look around or move around quite a lot. This is kind of like sensitivity, but a lot different, and it's not something I recommend you guys either lower quite a bit or raise quite a bit. That's why mine are pretty close to the default settings, and again, most people don't really mess with these, as I recommend you don't either. So that is mainly it for today's video. Once again, I went over sensitivity settings, I went over general settings that I think you guys should have on and even explain them further. I went over brightness and why I have mine turned up. I then went over my keybinds, and then lastly, kind of discussed dead zones in a very short amount of time. So you guys can definitely replicate my settings for yourself. Of course, I'd recommend you probably should optimize them more than replicating mine, but you can do as you'd like. Nonetheless, if you guys enjoyed today's video, I would appreciate a like down below, especially if you found it helpful. Once again, on the contrary, if you genuinely disliked today's video, feel free to leave a dislike, as I would also appreciate a comment, letting me know what I can improve on for future videos to make them more enjoyable for you. Also, if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, then feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. With that out of the way, my name is Gamertag. Thank you all for watching today's video, and I will see you tomorrow. Adios.